Hey guys, as many of you know, Kharkov has tremendous history. It's a history of many victories and accomplishments and challenges, but quite a few pages of our history, our city's history, are rather tragic. And Sean and I are at the Kharkov War Memorial today. It's a place that it's a forest that saw terrible atrocities. We just drove from the center of the city, and I'm going to show you the direction from which we came, from there. And we drove by the building at Sumskaya Street, Sumskaya 100, which was the headquarters of Gestapo in Kharkiv. And what they did oftentimes is to load people on Gazenwagen, so basically it's a truck, tented truck with the exhaust inside, so they would drive them here, and the drive, it took us about like 10 minutes probably.
10 to 15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, but we are in a modern car and the road is perfect, so it would take probably like half an hour at least. And so by the time they got to this forest and drove in, and that's where we are heading right now, people inside were dead, unfortunately. So we will, let's go.
Yep.
Sean, let's go. I will show you around. So this is a war memorial, even though the truth is that majority of people who found their eternal peace, I hope, in this forest were not soldiers and had nothing to do with the soldiers, but because of, or the army, but because this memorial, a beautiful memorial, fantastic place, some place we need, but it was created during the time of state propaganda. It was created in Soviet Union. They did not want to make such an emphasis on the civilian, like it makes you look like a pussy, you know. You want to build war memorials. You don't want to build memorials to the civilian people. This is the crazy mentality of the Soviet leadership. They wanted their country to look strong. Yes, it's a war memorial, you know, because what kind of message you send when you talk about the memorial to regular, you know, civilians? It's like you could not protect your civilian population, and of course they couldn't, because Kharkov was occupied for 2 years. But unfortunately, there was so much lies that even in such a scene as a war memorial, they couldn't just be completely honest.
Tell the truth.
It's in reality, it's a memorial to all those poor people who were unlucky to stay in Kharkov during the Nazi occupation. And there were some soldiers here as well, but just a little fraction. But they wanted it to look like a, you know, like the symbol of strength, while for some reason they believed that admitting the civilian loss was a symbol of weakness. I cannot understand why. It's a place that reminds us all about the, you know, the cost of this terrible war that took place, and also it's a reminder of how terrible totalitarian regimes are, both on the left and right side.
Right.
Because you have two most terrible regimes that the world has probably ever known, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, clashing with each other. And my grandpa, he was a Red Army soldier, and he fought for this country because he needed to save his own family and his own people. But it doesn't make the Soviet Union any better as the country, because they've done some terrible things.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, my grandfather fought in World War II, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and went through France and Germany and helped free, you know, the Jewish people, and helped so many people that were under Nazi occupation. So I got to tell you guys, from a person, it's pretty humbling. It's a pretty humbling place to be. And when you come to Kharkiv, you have to see it. I mean, it's just something, we don't want to ever repeat this or have this happen again. So, you know, we have to learn from what happened in history and never repeat it. So it's a good learning experience, I think, as somebody that's coming from the western side of the world, to be able to see this and really take this in and understand that the sacrifices that people made, you know, in order for the freedoms that we experience today. I think young people really need to appreciate what's happened and just make sure, Michael, that this never happens again.
Yeah, and you know, once again, the propaganda in the Soviet Union made people believe, or tried to make people believe, that Red Army soldiers were fighting for the Soviet Union, for Stalin, for the communism, where in reality, absolute majority of guys and women who were there in the Soviet army, in the Red Army, like my grandpa, they were fighting for their families, because what came here and what was here in Kharkov for 2 years, the absolute evil of Nazi, was going to destroy everything. And they were fighting for their own families and not the communism state or whatever.
Right.
Actually,
it was for all of humanity.
Absolutely.
I mean, because like you said, Michael, his intention was to take over the world.
Absolutely.
You know, one country at a time, and you know, it's everybody was impacted by this, and everybody needs to appreciate and respect, you know, the sacrifice and the things that people did, like your grandfather did,
and like your grandpa as well, because it was the Western Front has weakened and has stretched the German force so much. It happened this cause. It happened the Eastern Front a lot more than many people want to admit. It couldn't have. I mean, it's 100%. And it's guys, this is a big area. This is a forest which stretches many miles, and there were mass graves all over this forest. And then in late 1960s, you know, people after the war, of course, in the Kharkov, there were so many things that needed to be done and rebuilt. And so after, you know, like about 20 years, people realized that, you know, we keep finding those bones and remains of people in this forest, and people like coming here because it's a nice place for picnics and everything. And they were just finding those remains. And at some point, the government decided, you know, to try to collect most of at least what they found and put them to rest. The page that is, you know, the piece of history that very few people know is that in this area there used to be a experimental facility of the Nazi army, which is, when I found out about it, it just blew my mind. I could not believe that something like that was real. The German doctors found that, you know, like kids, little children, they're prone to, you know, to fall down and
right.
And their body, actually their blood, is designed in a way that helps them heal, because they're going to get cut and fall down. It's normal.
Right.
While adults, we don't often fall and get cut and everything. So I think it's red bodies in their blood, erythrocyte, I think it's called, erythrocyte. They help heal the wounds. So the German scientists, the German doctors figured that out, and they, in Kharkov, for the first time in history, they created the blood transplant kind of facility on the basis of the orphanage, which is maybe like 1 kilometer deep in the forest. It was for orphans, so kids without parents, and they would. There was, of course, a hospital, German hospital, where the wounded soldiers were. So they would draw blood from these poor little Russian, Ukrainian kids who were in the orphanage to put it into the soldiers,
like transfuse,
so that they can, you know, recover
yeah.
faster. But the thing is that even if you're an adult there is only like very little amount of blood you can donate unless you know, and if you have donated blood, you know that you feel like a little bit dizzy after this. You're kind of losing a little bit, like
Right.
So those animals, those Nazis, they were draining those kids dry.
Yeah.
And the children just go to sleep, because that's what happens. You just feel sleepy when you're losing blood, God forbid, and that's it.
Right.
And I personally spoke to a lady whose good friend was in this facility, and he was lucky enough to get there towards the end of the occupation, and he survived to become the professor of the Kharkiv Polytechnical University, a great man. This is just to give you an idea,
A perspective
of what was happening here. That's really, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much history that Michael's just gone over about what actually happened and the atrocities that happen here. And we know that the atrocities happen here. We also know that the atrocities happen all over Europe, you know, with what had happened with the Nazi regime, you know, and the idea that, you know, the things that were being done. And, you know, again, I just hark back to, you know, we need to appreciate what happened, you know, here. But we also need to understand that the human sacrifice that went into the freedoms that we all have today, you know, and never repeat what happened, and make sure that if anyone has that thought process, that we've, you know, that we stand up against that. And
Absolutely.
we're all united in that, and it doesn't matter where you're from.
And also the mistreatment of the veterans after the war was crazy in the Soviet Union. This is something very few people in the West know, but Soviet government, Soviet leadership was very scared of guys who were in Germany, who were in the West, in Europe, and came back, because those are people who were fighting for at least 3-4 years. They are trained, and now they have the knowledge of the lifestyle people lead abroad, and they know it's all not, at least it's not exactly the way the Soviet propaganda was showing, because they you know, and even later, even after the war, my dad, who was born in 1947, he told me that when he was a schoolboy, he sincerely felt very, very sorry for all the people in England, because they told them that people in England are starving to death. They have nothing to eat. So he and you are a child. How do you know? You know, there was no internet. You could not check it out. You
Right.
know? That's what.
There was no Google. There was
Yes.
nothing like that.
So the mistreatment of veterans here was crazy. My grandpa, after the war, he could not even reside in Kiev. He wanted to live in Kiev because his brother lived there, and they sent him far east of Russia, and they kept him there for like 6 years in a military base. He was a military officer, but nevertheless, you know, it's like he couldn't just choose. Can you imagine fighting a war, coming back home, and somebody tells you, no, you cannot live in this city. You have to go somewhere else.
I can't even imagine.
And the reason why they did it, they did not want those guys to be close to the centers, to the central cities, because they did not want a revolution. Because they really, the Soviet leadership, they were scared of the revolution.
Oh,
They
yeah.
thought that those guys who come back, who are trained, who have no problem killing people,
Right.
if they need to,
Right.
they will actually overthrow the Soviet leadership.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what they were scared of. You see, it's this is a very okay, guys. Once again, all the stats that I'm going to read right now, you should keep in mind. This was written in 1970s when all the stats were covered. They did not admit the casualties. So it says here in the Kharkiv region, the fascist barbarians shot, hung, and suffocated in the Gazenwagens 270,299 people in the fights for the liberation of Kharkiv from the fascist Nazi barbarian invaders. 186 106,306 soldiers of the Soviet army have lost their lives. So guys, 186,000. In reality, the modern historians say that this number should be multiplied at least by 3. So it was at least 600,000 people who were killed, the soldiers who were killed in the fights for Kharkov, because we had basically 4 battles of Kharkov. The first one when the Soviet army was retreating in October 1941. Then they managed to get back in February 1942. And then once again the Germans managed to recapture the city. Only in August 1943 the Red Army managed to recapture the city for good. So it's a terrible, terrible situation for Kharkov. So many stupid mistakes were made by the also by the military leadership. I mean, guys, I don't want you to get me wrong. It's impossible to overestimate the respect I have for the Soviet soldiers. My grandpa was there, but there is a difference in my mind between the Soviet soldiers, between the Soviet people who did everything and more than everything to stop this terrible, terrible thing, and the Soviet leadership.
Yeah, there's a huge difference.
There is a very big difference.
Huge difference.
So here is a note they found when they were excavating one of the mass graves. I choked up, I cannot. It says here, "To you, my motherland, all my life until the last drop of blood." And the date is 29th of July. Month is 7, 1942.
1942.
So 29th of July, 1942. There is a tradition in Kharkov that when people get married, they come here to lay the flowers to the eternal flame that we are now walking towards with Sean. To pay the respect. In Russian language, your homeland, we call it, just like in English, we call it motherland. And that's why you see such monuments across all over former Soviet Union, in Ukraine, in Russia, in Belarus, where it's a mother who is waiting for her son, who is never to come back. I don't know if you can hear the beat, the heartbeat. It says here, your valor is eternal, and your honor will never die.
Michael, what a powerful memorial. I mean, it just, the words can't describe what I'm seeing. You have to see it for yourself, and you have to, if you're coming to Kharkiv, you need to come here, and you need to pay respect to what occurred here. And again, just make sure nothing like this ever happens again.
Another page of the history is that many people, especially unfortunately in the modern Russia, especially in Russia, seem to forget, but not the veterans, Unfortunately, we have so few of them left.
Yeah.
But I know that my grandpa mentioned more than once about the help they got with the equipment, even with the gasoline that was imported through Murmansk, through the ports from United States, from England at some point, and it was a struggle of the entire world, and so. Yeah, it's terrible, when somebody tries to privatize what was done.
Yeah,
saying
the
like, yeah, it was
of war. It's.
I'm gonna read what it says here. You have a birch tree here. It says here, the heroes do not die, they obtain the immortality and forever stay in our memory, in our actions, in the great achievements of the generations to come. We owe our lives to them. Here lie thousands of Soviet people, soldiers, resistance fighters, partisans, and civilians who perished in the fight with fascism for the liberty and happiness of our homeland. Eternal glory to the heroes.